GPU prices are still higher than Snoop Dogg, yet everyone wants to play high quality games on ultra settings. I'm going to teach you with 8 fairly simple tricks how to optimize the heck out of your core game to reach highest performance possible. Let's have an example of a game hitting the limits of core's suggested object count. Tropiworld has right now around 29k objects and still it runs smooth as butter on 60 FPS as you can see here. The worst that I had as a feedback for this game so far was 30 FPS on a real low tier machine, which totally checks out taking in consideration that the servers run at 30 FPS anyway. So this player's minimum was the server's maximum. Anything above 30 FPS won't have any impact anyway. This huge game runs smooth as butter. I will teach you everything you need to know to up your game's performance in just one video. Let's check out the tricks to get there. First of all, I'm gonna show you an example on this building here with around 1000 objects, just for this one asset. Here I do also use quite a lot of additional lighting, which usually also would reduce performance quite a lot, but it's not the case. Generally, all tricks I show you here are handling some kind of custom properties of objects placed in your hierarchy. Every object has preset collision with players, but let's just think about it. Why should a painting on a wall need to calculate any collision with a player? Why? Every object with collision got some complicated math running in the background which we can avoid, as this is pretty intense on performance of your game. Thus you can disable game collision on all objects that are not essential to collide with the players. Here's another example of a stool. The legs consist of 8 objects, which usually would have this complex math going on for collisions, but instead I added a ring around it with collision and the legs of the stool have none. This reduces colliding objects by 7 in total just for this one of them, and as you can see the bar is filled with stools. The second trick I will show you is again avoiding some complex maths that does happen all around the place. It's the camera collision. Basically you have additionally to your character a camera following that has its own collision box. Similar with the game collision, there is quite some performance takeaway if you keep this setting for all objects enabled. By disabling camera collision wherever you can and where you don't really need it, you can save quite a lot on performance, and let's be honest, it's also annoying to have camera collision on every little object. If you played one of those more complex setup maps, especially indoors, you'd know how the camera jumps, zooms in, zooms out if you move it in an enclosed area. You can enhance your performance and add a little quality of life update to your games with this. The third trick in the row is again avoiding super complex math happening literally all the time. It's displaying and rendering shadows. There are many possibilities on assets to have overlaying objects, for which you can disable casting shadows on everything that is not responsible for displaying the silhouette of the overall asset. As you see, those 2 overlaying walls for the wicker chair don't need any shadows on the inner object to actually display the right shadow for the overall silhouette of the wicker chair. Avoid casting shadows wherever you can. This is so far from experience one of the big performance eaters. If you do it right, you will up your performance by quite a lot just by disabling shadows where they are not needed. Our trick number 4 on this list is similar to trick number 3. Let's care for some other techniques that objects use to receive and interpret shadows but also light. Distance field lighting. This is responsible for casting more detailed shadows and light, but here you can see in this corner, I hope you can see because it's pretty subtle, that the shadow becomes more smooth with distance field lighting enabled, which is literally useless for most cases and received lights and shadows as you barely see any difference in here. But it uses up some of your game's performance too, so make sure you disable it on most objects. Specifically in Tropiworld, I do not use distance field lighting on any objects and they still look as good as they can be. Trick number 5 is for moving objects. Watch this object. This fair right is a moving one. It rotates and it moves up and down. Moving objects are rendered differently according to the settings of the objects they include. Core has built-in angular motion blur, which adds a slight blur for moving objects, as they would be roundabout in real life. Yet this is another performance eater. So let's disable it and have instead no blur on moving objects, which I personally disable even in AAA games manually if it's possible. I prefer my graphics sharp and crisp. Number 6 on this list is a rather small topic. Core has a big variety of decals, which you can overlay on every object. Yet also this uses some kind of math in the background, which means it uses up some performance. Rather small, yet still valuable if you want a high-performant game. In my games, especially in Tropiworld, I disabled the capability to receive decals on literally every object I place, except where I specifically want to place decals. The effect might be rather small though, but it's still another performance enhancement. Trick number 7 on my list of tricks to make a core game highly performant is as simple as complex. As you can see, this game has round about 29k out of 30k objects in total, but as soon as we actually start the game, the object count gets down to 22k. So where are the 7k objects? Are they just deleted or not spawned yet? Well, nope, it's merging meshes. Let me display you how it works and an example of the effect. You can see here in the hierarchy an icon that does not look quite like a group. This indicates this is a merged group. Unmerging a few of my merged groups resolves in a few more objects in-game. What merging does is basically, if it's possible according to the placement of the individual primitives, it does not render some polygons that are overlaying each other. The effect on a small group might be not relevant looking if it's just saving 1 or 2 objects within a 20 or 30 objects group, as you saw, but it results in a saving, in this game, of 7,000 objects. Thus I can continue adding more assets without having any performance issues. There are some limitations though. Some special materials do not display properly, like glass or special effects, they just become invisible instead. But these are just a few exceptions. Overall, it is worth merging whatever you can. Just playtest your game and see which materials are not displayed and place them, as in my example in the hierarchy you can see, outside of the merged group. Let's get to the last trick up my sleeve for optimizing a game's performance. Here we have settings for relevance for objects to preset which objects are loaded from what distance. Here's an example. We reduce the relevance for the information booth to the lowest, and from the peer it does not even get rendered. Thus it does not use up any performance. But if we get closer, well, this is an extreme example here, then the objects get displayed. Finally, I can say there are more things to take in account when it's about programming an efficient game, but that's a whole nother topic. Map builders and asset builders should be ready to go and create the most performant games. Enjoy creating and keep going. Also, let me just use this possibility to share some info for my own course. The examples you have seen here are from Tropiworld Island, my own game which I am developing for over a year now, whenever I had time for it. Yet it has already a release date. On the 29th of September, Tropiworld will release to core games, and so far it becomes the biggest tycoon game on core. I hope to see some of you in the game someday, but until then you can join the Soultrace Studio Discord to stay up to date and get all relevant infos ASAP and chat with some cool people out there. The link is in the description as always, so yeah. What else is to say but see you later, right? See you there, don't be square. And some other quotes I could say. Oh yeah, leave a like and you can subscribe and follow. Sometimes I upload videos.